Well, the recent David Jones harassment scandal has increased debate over appropriate behavioural standards expected of senior executives and corporate culture. Joydeep is from People and Culture Strategies, here to shed light on what businesses should learn from the scandal. And Joydeep, good to have you in. And of course, you're with People and Culture Strategies now, but we know the face so well. Just talk to us a little bit about, I mean, obviously we're talking about the David Jones scandal here, but the lessons that businesses should really be taking away. Policies and procedures are one thing, culture is another. Take us through, firstly, though, policies and procedures, because, I mean, they're just the easy boxes people should be able to check.
Absolutely. And most organisations, certainly most large-size organisations, will have a number of policies that deal with things like discrimination, equal employment opportunity, workplace behaviour, occupational health and safety. All of these things are really price of entry for being any employer in this country. If you're not ticking off those boxes, you're probably going to have some difficulties. Having those policies on paper or available to your staff on an intranet or whatever is, again, one thing. Actually having them as living, breathing documents or institutions within your organisation is another. You've actually got to be talking to your staff about it. You're going to have to be training them about what all of that means in terms of their day-to-day conduct. A lot of organisations think that once they've got those policies and can produce something, if challenged on paper, that's ticking off all the boxes. It's not. In this day and age, unless you're accompanying it with a lot of training and a lot of mechanisms within the organisation to actually give people an opportunity to talk about these things, you're not even going close to compliance.
And such a good example of that in the David Jones scenario as well, when they had the big media briefing, it went on for a good hour. But one of the things they were saying is, well, they can show that they've had 12 complaints within their business from various employees, and this is what they were about. And you know, Mark McInnes, the previous CEO, he wasn't involved in any of those 12 incidents. So you were listening to that saying it's just not quite on the mark.
Well, the thing is that there's got to be a reality check applied to all of these internal complaint type things. Is it likely that a person is going to make a complaint against the most senior person in an organisation? Yeah. Some will, and there's always a little bit of a snowball effect that once one person does, you do tend to get other people coming forward having a little bit more confidence to do so. But as a general rule, if the person you're meant to complain to ultimately themselves has the person against whom you're making the complaint as their boss, naturally some people are going to be a bit apprehensive about the consequences of making those complaints. That's why a lot of organisations I've worked with a lot of organisations to establish these sort of whistleblower type lines.
Whistleblower is the word that comes to mind. In effect, they end up being a whistleblower.
Exactly. Now, again, that's not without its risks, but it's something that's going to get these issues identified and at least employees comforted that there is something or somewhere you can go without that immediate repercussion or risk of repercussion to your career. But I think this issue really highlights, and leave aside the specifics of the case or the allegations, but it highlights the need for organisations to look deeper. And what is the corporate culture within their organisation? And this is where I think organisations haven't really started to get into the space that I need to think that they get to. What's the culture of socialisation within the workplace? Is there a very strong, work hard, play hard culture? Is there a very strong drinking culture? What happens when there are off-site events, when there are Christmas parties? Is alcohol thrown around with gay band and other senior leaders within the organisation constantly putting their corporate credit cards behind the bar and saying, here I am wanting to brand myself as a fun person to work for and work with. I'm one of the team. But what does that really say about the types of behaviours that your leaders are demonstrating within your organisation? I know a lot of organisations really pride themselves on being fun places to work, but if your organisational idea of a fun place to work involves alcohol, bawdy behaviour, lewd behaviour, larrikinism, then you're going to be legally exposed. And this is the space that organisations really have to get to, and in my opinion, they're not even going close at the moment.
Because it's interesting, I suppose some places will attract workers on the very basis of what you said. We're a fun place to work and we can enjoy each other's company. But, I mean, very fine line. You don't want to be the boring place to work. No one will want to be with you.
Absolutely. And I fully understand that. It's easy from a legal perspective to say, sterilise the workplace. And certainly that's not what I'd be saying to any of my clients. But there's a long way that organisations can go to being fun places to work without embracing the level of legal risk that cases like this do demonstrate that you're sitting on a time bomb. And bear in mind that all it will usually take is for one person to raise an issue and your entire culture will unravel.
Yeah.
And that's the real risk.
So how do you go about that process at people and culture strategies if a client comes to you to say, you know, I can see the culture's heading in the wrong direction in terms of the legal aspects? How do you actually go down that path and change it? Because as we know, culture can be so ingrained.
Absolutely, and we're actually, as a live case study, working through this thing with 4 or 5 different organisations as we speak, where...
Because of the recent cases?
Absolutely, and also, I guess, a lot of people, a lot of very diligent senior managers looking at what the ramifications of the publicity of this kind of case might be for their organisation. So what we're doing is we're saying, well, let's make sure that we tick off all the boxes that we're at least required to from a legislative point of view. Let's spend time talking to people across the organisation to get a real feel for the culture. What are the things that we're aware of has happened that we've got away with as an organisation because no one's made a complaint? What are we going to put in place to stop those things from happening? Some of these things are going to be very easily addressed with those in leadership roles actually walking the walk. It's all very good to say, well, we're not going to stand for this, but demonstration effect from senior leaders, making clear statements. I've got a lot of senior CEOs and GMs of organisations who say, we're going to have all of these functions. Christmas parties are 5 months away probably, but as demonstration effect, I'm not going to drink. So the most senior person in the organisation is not going to consume any alcohol. By all means, others can, but that sends a very clear message that the boss is watching. So anyone who is going to play up knows that they do so under the watchful eye of the most senior person in the organisation. Now, that's something that I'm not saying is mandatory, but a lot of leaders are saying, well, look, that's the message that I want to send.
If you want to reduce the risk.
Absolutely.
As well. So, I mean, do you put that kind of thing into contracts? Again, I guess it goes full circle because then again you come back to procedures and checklists, but can that kind of thing go into a contract so that you've at least got some sort of something to go off if you do have an incident?
I think for senior executive contracts, organisations are well within their rights to say, look, you are the face of our business. Leave aside the fact that you have to comply with all of these policies that everyone has to comply with. We will hold you accountable at all times, not just when you're on the work clock, but at all times to behaving in an inappropriate way, higher standards of behaviour expected of you given the role that you occupy, and let's face it, what you're paid within this organisation.
Joydeep, great to have you in on that. Fascinating, certainly. We appreciate your time. Thank you.
Pleasure. Thanks, Brooke.
Joydeep Hoare, Managing Principal of People and Culture Strategies. Let's take a quick break here on the Business Channel. When we come back, a look at the impact of the rejigged resources tax.